Today we are going on a journey, a story of rebellion, of incredible discovery, and of mind-blowing technological leaps. This is the story of how we went from seeing the human body as this sacred, untouchable mystery to exploring its every detail in virtual reality. So let's get into it.
So let me start by asking you a question, and I want you to really think about it. Forget about supercomputers, forget about spaceships. What is, hands down, the most sophisticated and ridiculously complex machine on this entire planet?
Yep, it's the one you're using right this second, your own body. It's a self-regulating, self-repairing marvel of biological engineering that we're still trying to fully understand.
For most of human history, what was going on under our skin was a complete unknown. It was this sacred, almost forbidden territory. So this is the story of the rebels, the geniuses, and the innovators who dared to peel back those layers and map the incredible world inside all of us.
Our story starts way back in a time when trying to look inside the human body wasn't just, technically hard. It was often completely taboo. This was the forbidden frontier of medicine. So in the ancient world, you had a few pioneers laying the groundwork. You had Hippocrates, who gave us the first written descriptions, then Herophilus, who did something pretty radical. He performed the first actual human dissections. But the real giant of this era was Galen of Pergamum. His work in the 2nd century AD became the authority on anatomy for the next 1,500 years. Think about that, a 1,500-year shadow.
And this is where we hit the big problem. The thing that basically stalled medical progress for centuries. Because of a major taboo against human dissection in Rome, the brilliant Galen had to base all his work on animals, monkeys, pigs, you name it. And then he just kind of assumed humans were the same. For the next millennium and a half, his word was law. It was a medical system built on this incredibly smart but fundamentally flawed foundation.
And then, boom, the Renaissance hits. After centuries of just following the old rules, Europe just explodes with new art, new ideas, and this new courage to challenge authority. It was the perfect storm for a revolution in anatomy. And you can see that revolution perfectly right here. On the left, that's a typical anatomy drawing from the 12th century. It's fine, it's schematic, almost like a symbol. But then look at the right. That's from the 16th century, from a guy named Andreas Vesalius. The difference is just staggering, right? It's a shift from abstract ideas to stunning, observed reality.
So the man behind that incredible leap was Andreas Vesalius, and his philosophy was so simple, but at the time, it was absolutely radical. He basically said, look, real knowledge doesn't come from reading some dusty old book. It comes from the scalpel. It comes from looking with your own eyes. If you want to understand a human body, you actually have to look at a human body. And he didn't just talk the talk. He got his hands dirty, performing dissections himself, right in the middle of his lectures, which was unheard of. And by doing that, he just started knocking down Galen's 1,500-year-old authority one fact at a time. He showed that the human jaw is one solid bone, not two. The breastbone has 3 parts, not 7. And yep, he's the guy who finally corrected that old myth that men have one less rib than women. He single-handedly turned anatomy into a hands-on empirical science.
Okay, so the map of the body's physical structures, the hardware, is getting a lot clearer. But the next big challenge was figuring out its hidden systems. The dynamic processes you couldn't just see by looking at a cadaver.
So in 1628, an English doctor named William Harvey solved a huge puzzle, not with the scalpel, but with a bit of math. He calculated how much blood the heart pumps out, and he realized, wait a minute, the body could never produce that much blood from scratch, that fast. The only logical explanation, the blood wasn't being used up. It had to be circulating in one big, continuous loop.
But there was one little missing piece in Harvey's brilliant theory. How did the blood actually get from the arteries back into the veins? The answer needed a brand new piece of technology. So in 1661, a guy named Marcello Malpighi used one of the first microscopes, peered into a frog's lung, and saw them. This whole network of tiny hair-like vessels connecting the two. He called them capillaries. They were the final invisible link.
For centuries, anatomy was really the study of the dead, but a new wave of tech in the 19th and 20th centuries was about to flip that script completely. It would finally let us see inside a living, breathing human body for the very first time.
I mean, just think about it for a second. For pretty much all of history, this was the only way you could study an organ like the brain, by taking it out of a skull. You could see its structure, sure, but you can never, ever see it in action.
But then, a discovery made in 1895 would completely change our relationship with our own bodies. It was the moment anatomy finally became a living science.
I'm talking about the X-ray. All of a sudden, in 1895, we could see the skeleton inside a living person without making a single cut. It was a game changer, and it just blew the doors wide open. By 1971, we had CT scans giving us detailed cross-sections of soft tissue. And not long after that, MRI and ultrasound gave us even more powerful, even safer windows into the body's hidden machinery.
And that brings us right up to today. This whole journey that started with a scalpel has now moved into the digital world, a world of data and pixels that's revolutionizing anatomy all over again.
Yeah, the modern anatomy lab would look like science fiction to Physicist. Today, students can literally step inside a virtual human body with VR, or they can overlay digital anatomy onto a real patient with AR. They can do virtual dissections on digital cadavers, hold a perfect 3D printed heart in their hands, or study real human tissue that's been preserved forever through a process called plastination.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it. The original quest of Physicist, to see the body with his own eyes, to explore it directly, is now happening in ways he couldn't have possibly imagined. This tech gives us this incredible power to see, to manipulate, and to understand our own bodies like never before.
So, from forbidden dissections in candlelit rooms to fully immersive virtual reality labs, the journey to understand ourselves has been absolutely incredible. We've mapped the organs, we've decoded the systems, and now we can literally walk through the human body in 3 dimensions. Which leaves us with one final thrilling question. What secrets are still waiting for us to discover inside the most complex machine on Earth?